She cannot breathe. The cold is everywhere, wrapping around her like a shroud of ice. A roar of rushing water fills her ears, drowning out her own thoughts as the world turns black again. The screams she hears are not hers. They belong to the crowd on the riverbank, cheering as if they are watching a play. Dragged upward by a creaking wooden beam, she gasps just once, a desperate, ragged inhale of air before they plunge her right back under. This isn't an execution ordered by a king for treason. This isn't justice defined by any written law. This is entertainment. A punishment for a crime so vague it could be applied to anyone. Speaking too loudly. Disagreeing with a man, or simply being a woman who would not stay silent. The contraption used to break her will is brutally simple. A wooden chair bolted to the end of a long, pivoting pole. The structure hangs over a pond thick with mud, deep enough to drown someone if the chair doesn't rise again. The villagers laugh as the operator pushes the pole downward. The wood groans under the weight. She vanishes beneath the dark. Murky surface. Seconds pass. Then minutes. Her lungs burn as if they are on fire. She claws desperately at the leather restraints, cutting into her wrists, but the water holds her down. The men holding the beams smirk. They wait. They wait until the bubbles stop rising. They wait until her struggling slows. And then, just before death takes her, they bring her back up, only to do it again. This is the ducking stool. A punishment designed not just to hurt, but to humiliate, to break the spirit of women who dared to have a voice. Some survived the freezing plunge. Many did not. Their bodies sank into the sludge below, never to rise again. And every death was met with applause. To understand why the ducking stool existed, we must step into a world obsessed with silence. Not peaceful silence, but controlled, enforced silence. Medieval Europe and later colonial America lived under a rigid order where men commanded and women obeyed. But occasionally, a woman spoke too boldly. She questioned a decision, insulted a neighbor, or refused to let a false accusation go unanswered. For this, she earned a title, a scold. The crime of being a scold wasn't about truth. It wasn't even about harm. It was about defiance. A scold was a woman who disrupted social harmony simply by talking. Churches preached discipline. Civil courts upheld it. Communities enforced it with glee. The ducking stool became the ultimate warning. Don't challenge your husband. Don't question authority. Don't let your voice rise above a whisper. Historians often describe these punishments as deterrence, a way to keep the peace. But the records tell a much colder story. Women were not dunked to fix behavior. They were dunked to prove a point. Every splash, every gasp for air reminded the other women in the crowd what happened when the powerless resisted. Trials for scolding required no evidence, no victim, and no injury. All it took was a few complaints from men who felt slighted. Her tongue is too sharp. She insults honest men. She spreads rumors. Even worse, some women were punished simply because their husbands felt embarrassed. A wife who argued in public made a husband look weak, and weakness was intolerable. The ducking stool became the crowd's favorite answer to female disobedience. It turned public squares and riverbanks into theaters of cruelty. At first glance, the ducking stool looked like a harmless piece of construction equipment, a timber beam, iron bolts. a humble chair. But every inch of its design served one purpose: total domination. The beam, long enough to stretch from land to deep water, was mounted on a pivot point like a seesaw. This gave the operators massive leverage. One push downward, and the victim plunged with terrifying speed. One pull upward, and she surfaced, gasping and humiliated, only to face another drop. The chair itself was crude, often made of splintered wood bound by rusted metal. It had no cushions, no comfort, just flat. Cold surfaces and restraints that tightened with every struggle. Leather straps locked across the wrists, across the ankles, and across the chest. There would be no escape. Not even enough freedom to swim if the mechanism failed. The public watched as officials examined the setup with mock seriousness. They checked the bolts, the rope, the water's depth, not out of concern for the woman's life, but to ensure the punishment would last as long as possible without killing her too quickly. The operator controlled everything: how long she stayed above water, how quickly she dropped, how deep she went. Water itself became a weapon. The sudden cold filled the lungs with shock, triggering an involuntary gasp that sucked in fluid. The body panicked, desperate to breathe. But the moment she surfaced for air, she was shoved back down. The chair hammered her spine against the wood with every plunge. Mud swallowed her legs. Her hair tangled, wrapping around her face like a wet death mask. Some stools were fitted with wheels so they could parade the woman through the town before the dunking. First, a rolling stage for mockery. Children threw rotten vegetables and mud. Men hurled insults louder than the splash would be. And then, one final humiliation. The moment she was lowered over the water, all eyes locked on her terror. Because the ducking stool wasn't only torture, it was theater. It was a public spectacle fueled by cruelty disguised as righteousness. In theory, the goal was to cool the tongue of argumentative women. In practice, it was a coin toss between agony and execution. If the chair dipped too deep, the victim wouldn't return. If it slammed into underwater debris logs, rocks, trash bones snapped, and skulls cracked. If the mud trapped the chair, the operators shrugged and called it God's decision. The woman ceased struggling. The water went still. The crowd went home. But the stool remained, waiting for the next lesson, a silent machine of oppression. Simple enough for any community to build, and deadly enough to silence countless voices. Her name was Alice Turner. A wife, a mother, a woman who refused to bow her head. The year was 1633. In a small English parish where gossip flowed faster than the local river, Alice had spoken ill of a constable, a powerful man with a fragile pride. He accused her of scolding. Nothing more, nothing less. It was enough. Dragged from her home, Alice screamed that it was unfair, that she had spoken only the truth. But truth never mattered when power felt threatened. Her daughter, just 9 years old, tried to cling to her skirt. Sobbing, guards tore them apart. The girl's cries were drowned by the cheers already building outside. Alice was marched through town as neighbors jeered. Some she had helped in the past. Some who had once called her friend. Now they spit at her feet. Fear makes people cruel. At the riverbank, she saw the ducking stool for the first time. A sun-bleached chair suspended over black, churning water. The mud below churned like a hungry mouth. They strapped her down. Rough hands yanked leather tight until her skin bruised purple. She begged not for herself, but for her daughter to be taken away. To not witness this, no one listened. The constable gave the order. The beam tipped. Alice plunged. Cold stabbed her chest like a knife. Her lungs seized. Darkness swallowed her whole. She kicked wildly, but the restraints refused mercy. Her heartbeats thundered in her skull like a war drum. She prayed she would rise again. When she did, it was only long enough to choke on air and see her daughter screaming her name on the bank. Then down again. Another plunge. Each descent lasted longer than the last,